Ketanji Brown Jackson is the mom of the Supreme Court. She is the matriarch, even though she is the latest to the bench. And I've talked about this in a previous video, but I think it's worth bringing it back up again because you might have seen people talking about her rulings in the Barber versus Trump case, the birthright citizenship case. And in her concurrent opinion, the Chief Justice, Chief John Roberts, wrote the opinion, and she wrote a separate concurrent opinion specifically to address the dissenting opinion and remind them of history and since you figure wag them like, And what she did in this decision is a masterclass, is a history lesson. It was so thorough. It was like, I'm going to put context into this case. And I'm not going to let you, Clarence Thomas, who once upon a time during the Scalia era, consider yourself an originalist, where you're only going to look into the original text as is, as intended, and not really take in consideration pop culture and trends or what's going on in the legislature, what's going on in other places. You're going to just focus on the law itself, what's before you. He used to be like that. He's not like that anymore. He even admitted he's not like that anymore. So in his dissent, he says the original intent of the 14th Amendment, it really was to give citizenship to the formerly enslaved people. Originalism. And so she said, originalism, fine, but you are going to ignore the fact that after that act, when Congress codified, meaning take this, you have to actually have details. So there's that, the Constitution, a big piece of paper, there's all these amendments and added, so it's like a charter, but you need some meat and potatoes. Congress put the meat and potatoes in it and codified that. When Congress codified it, she said in her responding to his dissent, she said it was a reset. It was Congress saying we're no longer going to operate a caste system when we put certain people in different categories. Around that time, the Citizenship Act was was being enacted related to Chinese people, because they were like, well, should we let these Chinese people who are here, should we not let a baby who's born here to Chinese parents be a U.S. citizen? And they're like, you know what? We need to stop this stratification. We're going to let everybody be a citizen. And Clarence Thomas, you know that, because they used the 14th Amendment Equal Protection Clause to protect white people. In what case? Now you think about race, because you were saying we're a race neutral. That's why you guys pulled back affirmative action. Y'all said race does not matter. That's why Justice Kavanaugh was like, race is inconsequential to stop and frisk and stop and harass in Los Angeles during the ICE capades. So affirmative action, race doesn't matter. We can't take into consideration race when it comes to voting. But all of a sudden, when it came to birth, you were looking like, well, it was really only for the black people. So essentially, that's what she was saying. She was like, you're a piece of work. So she lays it down. She even says, she says, you know what? And there's so many examples of how, when people talk about the framers, when you hear someone say the framers or the original people, the 14th Amendment was intended for this, the framers also include the people who came after, who codified the 14th Amendment. The framers include the people who debated that. And she said, in her opinion, there have been moments of time in history after the 14th Amendment was written when people have, a member of the Congress, a senator, have risen to make an argument. In that argument, it included the notion that everyone born here is, once you're born here, you're a part of citizen. And she said, when that happened on the floor of Congress, no one stood up to say, no. There was no debate. There has never been a debate about that, ever. When people say something like, well, they never knew the illegal immigrants going to exploit it, she said, and what Chief Justice Roberts said in his opinion, there was no concept of foreign, because first of all, you remember, these people just got here. So how are they excluding people when they just got here on somebody else's land? They wouldn't think about other people and other stuff. They're like, oh, we all just got here. So there was no consideration of immigrants or people from other countries. And Chief Justice Roberts said, you have concepts like mother and father and all these things in their brief. None of that stuff was in this law. So you add in more stuff. Clarence Thomas tried to say that the majority was adding things to the 14th Amendment, and they were just like, "What are you talking about? We adding stuff? It been added. It was added long time. You're the one that's ignoring the adding, the addition. You're ignoring that addition. You've seen the peoples make the arguments, and you can too. To anybody who says that it's only about the slaves, we're like, okay, fine, put your AR-15s. Let's start doing the regulations. Let's start gathering off those automatics, because when the Second Amendment was created, it was only about muskets and cannons. So if we're going to be doing that argument, that's what you're always going to respond to. When somebody say it was black, you say two things. You say one, originally, but it since then, once codified, it responds to everyone. And everyone right now has been benefiting from the 14th Amendment since it was codified. There's so much case history when someone say they weren't treated well and that person is not black. And Justice Thomas used that as well. So that's the first thing you say, like, okay, yeah, originally, but then it's been changed. The second thing you respond to people like that is that, okay, originally doing the original, because usually the people who don't like the 14th Amendment or don't like the expansion, those people are usually also aficionados of the Second Amendment. So you just clap back to them, like, okay, fine, okay, let's get rid of that. Let's take away your guns. They ain't gonna want to go get rid of the guns. If we're gonna acknowledge you can have your AR-15, you should also acknowledge that these people who have their baby here, even though they're not documented, their baby can still be. So, in her current opinion, it was a masterful job. I forget how many pages it was, but it was very thorough. She went through the history. She talked about everything. You can't miss. It's kind of like her dissenting opinions, because she had to do a lot of dissenting opinions since she's been on the bench, are master classes. They are good. She used great analogies. She makes you think. They're just brilliant. And we always say there's going to be classes in the future. There's going to be classes dissecting the great dissents of Ketanji Brown Jackson. And we're going to be studying. There's going to be tests on it. So, yeah, she's a brilliant woman. She's masterful at her job. Yeah, I went to she was on a book tour for her memoirs. I was there, and I bumped into people from law school. And of the folks I bumped into, I took a picture. Two of them are judges now, and so it's like the future. It was great. It was great. Yeah, she's a brilliant person. And so if you ever see Donald Trump call her low IQ, I mean, Donald Trump, you can barely speak at a fifth grade level. You just learned that the word dumb ended with the B. Like at 80 years old, you just learned that. You're really not smart. And he's not the most intelligent person. You always call somebody low IQ. If let Ketanji Brown Jackson take an IQ test and you take an IQ test. Donald Trump needs to take an IQ test. Somebody needs to force it. He does cognitive tests. He's like, I passed my cognitive test. I was successfully able to point out a giraffe and an elephant. I'm smart. And you'll see some of the magazines try to call her a DI. They've been calling Amy Coney Barrett a DI, and that's just an insult. That's just when someone doesn't like they want to insult you, and they figure like the best way I can do it is just say you got your job because of your race or your gender, which is stupid, which is not true. And they try to call Amy Coney Barrett liberal. In what world? The person who overruled affirmative action, the person who overruled Roe, the person who just been going along with the guys, all these cases. This one, all of a sudden she's liberal. Y'all are absolutely stupid. Y'all make no sense. The level of just inconsistency, the intellectual dishonesty just flows through every bit of Republicans and MAGA. Astound every single day how like dumb they are. So yeah, they're calling her that because they don't get this. They're stupid. They throw out the Constitution. Donald Trump. They made this man their identity. So which is going to be so interesting, because I do believe at some point when we reveal everything, there's going to be something that's going to be discovered about that man. And when we discovered that man, all the people who like just say he's the best president ever, and who've like just made their identity that man, a lot of them are going to be like jumping off ship, and some of them are going to deny they ever were. And we're going to be there to say, now we have receipts. I'm creating receipts. JJ Lee, each one teach me. Share this video so more people know. KBJ.